Hello, everyone. It's me, Andrew. I'm here in my home in lovely Ligonier, Pennsylvania. Hopefully, you all are having a great day out there. It's election day here in Pennsylvania for the primary, so we're going to head on over to our voting polls right after this. So, I was going to go to the cottage, but I don't know how long this is going to take, so I didn't want to miss voting and doing my civic duty. So here I am. All right. So hopefully you all are having a great week. Start to your week. It's been busy, busy, busy here. I've just ran up and down the stairs, so I'm a little bit out of breath, which probably means I should work on that. Um, you know, getting too comfortable hanging out doing emails with the cats. So yeah. Anyway, so over the weekend we were fortunate enough to be asked to participate in Contemporary Crafts Family Day, and we did a project where we used a two-part epoxy clay to create some really cool pendants with all ages, from little kids to grown-ups. And I think it was a lot of fun, and I think it was successful. We had a lot of questions about if people could do that or like how to do it who couldn't come. So I thought that I would take an opportunity to do that here. It's pretty simple. I've done several tutorials over the years about using epoxy sculpt. Um, I was fortunate enough to be featured in a book called Foxy Epoxy. Crystal Wick wrote the book, and I was featured in it. I have a couple different projects in there, and I was on a PBS show called Beads, Bubbles, and Jewels, where I showed some different epoxy clay techniques there. And that's probably about 10 years ago or so that happened. But I've been using it for a long time. And my first introduction to it was when my sister, Cynthia Thornton of Green Girl Studios, came home for the holidays one year. She was going to art school at the Columbus College of Art and Design in Columbus, Ohio. And she and I think it was her roommate, her name was Sunny. They drove down on Cynthia's Mustang. She still has it. It's a classic Mustang, and they drove down for the holidays, and money was tight, so we all kind of made each other presents. And she was like, "Hey, have you seen this epoxy clay?" And I was like, "No, I have not." And so we made a bunch of stuff then, and I was hooked because, for one, you don't need an oven to make it work, to harden it. It's the chemical reaction between the part A and part B is what causes it to self-harden. And it's a really cool product. It's waterproof, and it's also a good product for if you can't put something back in the oven. Or if you're doing a repair, like if you are fixing a wooden picture frame, for example, this is a really good product for that, because then you can just mix it up and use it and paint over it and color match and do all that, and it will work perfectly. So for some things, like if you chip a ceramic thing or whatever, this is also good for that, because you can't necessarily put things always back in the kiln, and have them marry up. And so this is a really cool kind of cheater way to get around that. I think it's a really versatile product, and it can be used in so many different ways. And there are a lot of wonderful artists out there who are using it, and I hope you take a look. One of our fellow GBE presenters, Christy Friesen, she uses it a lot. And I definitely recommend you check out some of her tutorials because they're lots of fun, very whimsical. So I see a couple people who have tuned in. Hey, June, how's it going? Hey, Sandra. June says you and Jamie were great in the TGBT. That was a great bead trade. Thank you so much. I'm glad you liked it. Sometimes I get a little bit sassy, so hopefully that didn't make people be like, "Ooh, what's happening here?" Um, so, yeah, we had fun. Made lots of stuff. I made most of my stuff, or I finished up most of my stuff off camera, which I know can kind of be a little bit like, "What you doing? I thought you're supposed to do this on camera." And I did do some projects on camera. However, the when I was doing the forging of the little tiara slash diadem, I had to do that off camera because it was really loud. Um, and also, I move around a lot in my studio. I don't know about you, but I move around a lot. So, um, some projects are good for stationary, kind of like sitting in one place and making things. And then other things, I'm always like buzzing around. So, for the projects that I needed to go to around to different multiple stations in the studio, I had to do off camera because it's a little bit um, discombobulating sometimes. Also, we were having so many tech problems, um, and we had to stop and restart the video a couple different times, and the sound was off, and the image was off, and I we practiced beforehand and got everything kind of set up. However, you never know what's going to happen. And it was Jamie's first day back after being sick with the flu for a while. So we hit the ground running, and I'm glad that she didn't end up like straining herself too much, because I know that when I'm sick, I'm just like, I don't want to do anything. So yeah. All right. Norma says election day in Kentucky too, but our polls are closed at 6. Yeah, our polls close at 8, so we can squeeze in right after this is done. I have to put on hard pants though. Generally speaking, I wear like shorts and sweatpants and pajama bottoms for like forever. Um, but I'm going out into public, so you know. Charlene says, "Hey guys, hey, right back at ya." Marianne says, "Howdy, hey, how's it going?" Susie is watching. Hey, Susie. Suzanne is watching. Hey, Suzanne. So we've got lots of folks watching. All right, so let me flip this around before we go too far down the rabbit hole, because that'll be good. One thing that I do want to say is that if you are looking for any supplies, definitely stop by our website. That's allegorygallery.com. We've got tons of stuff there, and we add more stuff pretty much every day. So I know sometimes the website is a little bit confusing. We had a little bit of, I don't want to say a technical error, but they did an update to the system, and so it showed that you had to create an account if you didn't have an account. So Shopify does these two different things where you can kind of do an express checkout, and then you have to do one that you have to create an account for. And so people who have placed, I don't know, dozens of orders with us were like, "Hey, what's up? I'm trying to place an order and it's not going through." And we were running a sale this weekend to coordinate with the Great Bead Trade. Um, and so it was a little bit frustrating, but we got it worked out. But another thing that I want to suggest is that if you are looking for stuff on our website, that's allegorygallery.com, be sure to go through the menu and look through all the different subcategories and different things like that. Because if you look at just the first page, you're only getting kind of like the cliff notes of what is actually in the shop. So you'll only see like a couple, maybe like a dozen products, and we actually have thousands of products. So if you want to see the full range, go explore into the website. There's lots of cool stuff. We added a bunch of new things. Um, there's a new kit. I'm on fire for this color palette of purples and blues and this very Perry. If you walk through my garden, I would take you through my garden today. I mean, but um, like I said, I'm not wearing hard pants right now. So you can be like, okay, hold on a moment where I put on some real pants before I go outside. Um, we can go to downstairs and look at all of my flowers, which I've got a lot of forget-me-nots, and there's some wild hyacinths, and the tulips that are blooming now are kind of like a purple and black, and kind of there's definitely a tonal color shift, which I think is pretty kind of wild. Earlier in the spring, there were a lot of like orange and yellow and red, and now it's all these like blues and purples and periwinkle colors. Um, so I think that's pretty cool. And then I think after this, they'll warm back up a little bit because we've got some peonies that are going to bloom, and the peonies are kind of like pinks and reds and different colors like that, and fuchsia. And sometimes people are like, why do you post pictures of your flowers on your Instagram? Well, for one, they're pretty cool, but also I derive a lot of inspiration from my garden and from flowers, and I know it's kind of cliche to say from nature, but I do think that there is a wonderful kind of curation of color palettes that happens on in the natural world around us. So I derive a lot of inspiration from that, and I think it's pretty cool, and hopefully other people will think it's cool as well. um, so yeah, that's why I post pictures of my flowers. Plus, I can do what I want, right? So, and if you're curious about that, my Instagram is Andrew T Thornton 100. That's THORNTON. Sometimes people forget the N in the middle, and people are like, "How come it doesn't come up?" And I was like, "It does come up. It is real. I'm not playing y'all." But whatever. All right. So what was I saying? Um, yeah. So we've got a lot of different things happening. We put a new kit online. There's only a couple left. William did a debut of it yesterday. In case you missed that, you can always watch the replay. Um, and yeah. So we've also been getting ready for a photo shoot. At Star Cottage Studio. We're actually going to do it at the store and Star Cottage Studio. So we've been double downing on the cleaning. And Star Cottage Studio, if you don't know what that is, it's my personal studio and the new shipping department for Allegory Gallery. So we've been working. We have to cut the grass there. So hopefully we can get that done today before it rains again, because it's been raining off and on here in southwestern Pennsylvania. And you can't really mow the grass when it's wet because it clumps up and it's kind of a mess. So hopefully we can get that done tonight. We'll see after we get done voting. All right. But so we've been cleaning that like crazy, and it's pretty nice right now. If you saw the Great Bead trade, you could see in the background behind me, you could see what it looks like. So hopefully you all enjoyed that little sneak peek of my studio. That's my bead room. Originally, that was going to be the storefront at Star Cottage Studio, but because there were some issues with getting ADA compliance and some other different things, we weren't able to do a retail space there this year. which led us to work with this project called the Acre Project. And the Acre Project is then kind of pitched us into doing pop-up shops and some various other things, and which is why we're getting things ready for the photo shoot. I know sometimes people, when they think about the bead store, they assume that all we do is just like, oh, here's some pretty beads and look at them, they're nice, buy them. But there's so much stuff that goes on behind the scenes that people don't realize goes on. Like somebody said, oh, you're so lucky that all you get to do is create all day. And I was like, well, that would be nice. But actually, I'm actually that I don't get to do that all day. So I get to do it more now than I did before, but a lot of my day is spent doing emails and whatever. So anyways, circling back to our project today, we're going to get ready. I'm going to flip the camera around and you'll see the ceiling for a second. Hopefully I arrange it so there's not like a crotch shot because I'm wearing like super shorty shorts because it's hot here. It's like in the 80s here. And I grew up in Florida, and you'd think that I would be acclimated to it, but I've been up in the north too long, and now my blood is too thick, or I don't know. It's like molasses, and I'm all like, the heat. Turn on the air, William. It's the heat. So yeah. So hopefully we'll get this worked out without any complications. I see a couple more people have tuned in. Karen tuned in. Hello, Karen. Julie has tuned in. Hello, Julie. Remember when we had Julie and other Julie and another Julie? Now we just have one Julie, pretty much. Sometimes we have more than one. Marion says the flowers are beautiful. Thank you. Amanda says that she follows me on Instagram. Awesome. Cindy says, hi, Andrew. Nature is full of color inspiration. I agree. Sometimes when I'm reading, because sometimes I get asked to sit on grant review panels and to jury things. And so I read a lot of artist statements, like a lot of artist statements. And one of the biggest cop-outs that I hear is, I'm inspired by nature. And this may be true. You may be inspired by nature. But the thing is that when you read about 500 artist statements and they all say, I'm inspired by nature, I'm inspired by nature, nature inspires me, I find inspiration in nature, all different variations of that, I get like my eyes just glaze over. So the thing that I always encourage people to do, and if you are inspired by nature, say what exactly you are inspired by nature. And I think that will help you differentiate yourself and make yourself stand out. And I'm not just saying that because for when I get read some more artist statements and I want something a little bit more with some razzle dazzle, as they say, but be specific about what exactly inspires you. So is it repetition and pattern? Is it the color palettes? Is it the organic, whatever, the organicness of it, or the Fibonacci sequence, or, divine inspiration through the world around you? There's a lot of things that nature can be. And also the other thing that I want to say is that the word nature is very subjective. And I don't know if people know how subjective it is and how loaded it is, because not everybody comes from the same background. So when you say, oh, I'm inspired by nature, somebody who has grown up and was born and raised in a very urban environment may have a very different relationship to nature than you do. So it's always helpful to be specific and saying what about this environmental environmental influence is playing a part in your work. So just some tips if you're writing your artist statement. I know that a lot of people are applying for shows right now, um, and having to put themselves out there. So just keep that in mind. I can't speak for everybody. Maybe somebody, they're like, oh, they said the same thing that 50 other people do. Check mark. Let's put them ahead. But if you're really trying to kind of stand out from the crowd, I would say be more specific. All right. Terry says, hello, Andrew. Marion says, I love really big trees. And it's a cool, you can play on that, saying, the scale of things and feeling small in the presence of something big and massive, and feeling connected to the earth or to the primordial nature of things, or the awe of being near something that is so old and so majestic. I mean, there's so many different ways you can play on that, if that is what inspires you. All right, I'm gonna flip the camera around and we're gonna get started. All right. All right, here's my surface that I'm working on. Cindy says, I love how green goes with everything. I also love how a dead leaf is full of variegated color. I think that is another thing where you can talk about cycles of life and different things like that. And you can relate, if you're trying to incorporate that kind of into an art history speak, you can talk about Veritas or Memento Mori paintings, where it's kind of the remember death. I think that's one of those things where it's a common thing that a lot of artists kind of um, work through in their artwork, is their self-identity and where they are in life and as a human, and kind of, it's something, when they say that, let me scroll back a second and say that a lot of times artwork, people say, that the most effective artwork is the artwork that makes you feel. And sometimes that comes from kind of talking about universal experiences and kind of exploring those things, that those topics and themes that everybody kind of experiences, and showing it in a lens that is specifically your own, and kind of using that as a platform to talk about those kind of universal expressions. And there's a lot of different things that you can do and approach in that way. So anyways, I hope that if you all are applying to different things, that you're very successful in your applications, and I wish you a lot of luck in doing them. But as I digress, I'm going to jump into the project for today, because as I mentioned in the very start of this video, we've got to go and run out and vote. So I don't want to get there and the polls are closed, or there's a big long line or whatever. Generally speaking, that's not an issue where we are, but better get it over. All right, so here's my surface. I like to work on a surface that I'm not afraid to get messy. And also, I recommend putting down, if you don't have like one of these little mats, this is the plastic kind of mat that you can put for table setting. If you don't have one of these, put down a piece of wax paper Otherwise, just assume that you're gonna, I don't want to say ruin your surface, but it can propose complications. Now, we also are going to be having to use, let me see here. We will need the epoxy sculpt or your choice of 2-part epoxy clay. I like epoxy sculpt. It's commercially available, which is super nice. You can run down to a lot of the big box stores and get it. If you are in an area that doesn't have, specialty stores that stock this, because this is kind of a specialty product. So this is, there are you. I should say that you can get this more readily now than you could before. So if you are interested in using this, it comes in all different colors. There's a lot of resources online where you can find this. We don't currently carry it at Allegory Gallery, but I'm going to talk with William about it. Um, this does have a shelf life. So generally speaking, we don't carry a lot of things that have shelf lives because we're such a small shop that, uh, unless you're guaranteed that you're going to sell out, it kind of is problematic. With beads, they don't really go bad. So I can have beads for 20 years and that's not a problem. But anything that could like get hardened or is impacted by the weather, you kind of have to be mindful of that. So, like at one point we had resin and in the shop, and we had it where it was sitting in a shelf that got a lot of direct sunlight, and it kind of got cooked in the summertime and was not viable after it got cooked in the sunshine. So that's another thing about storing your products. Keep them in a cool, dark place, cool, dark, dry place. Um, and that will make sure that your pieces last a long time. Now, there is a couple people that said that if you want to extend the life of epoxy sculpt, you can store it in the freezer. I don't know about that. They say that you can do that, but I would just recommend getting smaller containers and using what you need, and then getting replenishing when you get a new one, instead of getting great big things and then trying to make that last, because sometimes there's cross contamination and different things like that. And it's kind of like those big bottles of E6000. I'm like, oh, I can save money if I buy the big one. However, I find that by the time I get the first couple squeezes out of the E6000, it's already dried up and crusty in the tip, and it just dries out before I can get to it. So nowadays, I just use the little small ones for my projects, and then when I need to swap them out, or when I need to refresh, I just open a fresh bottle and it's always kind of fresh, instead of having to like dig out some hard and crusty in the tip. So you can maybe squeeze out some super thick, hard glue adhesive. So that's just my philosophy on that. But y'all can do what you want. So just so you know. All right. Cindy says, I've never caught a live before. Well, welcome, Cindy. I'm glad you can tune in. Terry says, they are amazing opportunities to ask questions. And Cindy says, thank you. And Cindy Brooks says, I bought some from Christy. Yes, Christy sells some. And head on over there and check out her selection. I think she's got some in different colors. This is just the gray color, and I can show you a technique on how to make it less gray looking. Now, I'm going to show you something that I made recently, since it's mermaid. I have this little vintage Japanese little ceramic doll, and it was kind of banged up. So I didn't feel bad about modifying it. Originally, I was going to do a beaded tail, but I decided not to do that. And partly because I was trying to do the beading on this and it was slipping and doing all this other stuff. And I was like, I don't know, I gotta finish this up and let's cook with the gas and get it done. So I ended up just making this epoxy tail, and I think it's pretty cute. I used some taxidermy eyes for the eyes, so I thought that was pretty cute. It looks very pleased with it. So it's like, who, me? All right. And then, so I couldn't sleep last night. So I made this little brick stitch mermaid, and it's a variation on a project that is in that I found on Etsy. And I thought it was pretty cute. So I thought maybe we could do something with this today, because I was like, what am I going to do with this little giblet? It's just going to float around in my studio and, just sit there and whatever. So I thought that I may do something with this. We'll see if I find the right project for this. And then, so we'll also need something to stick into the epoxy clay. So I have lots of different bezels, or a lot of different cabochons and beads and all kinds of different stuff that I can work with that. I also have mica powders, and mica powders are great for adding color. I think that that's a super important thing, especially if you have this kind of dead gray colored epoxy sculpt, which is fine. It is what it is. I think of this as kind of a utilitarian kind of. It's not. I mean, you could use it for its design aesthetic. However, it is gray, so if you want to add color, I can show you how to do that. So more things. Now, the other thing that I've gone ahead and done is I've made these beeswax applicators, and this is simply chopsticks that I've dipped in melted beeswax that I heated up in the microwave. When you first do it, they're super smushy, so just keep that in mind. Um, it's kind of like a candle. You don't pour a candle and then instantly light it. You kind of let it season so that it can kind of stiffen up and do what it needs to do. So these are a really wonderful way of picking up and manipulating and moving things around that are small and maybe are not easy to do. They also have a product called the Crystal Katana, which is basically the same thing, except I just made these myself. And that, when you do this, you kind of save that, some cash doing that. But, it's up to you what you want to do. They also, uh, Swarovski, before they kind of went their own way, luxury brand style, they used to do their own kind of epoxy clay, and they had their own kind of applicator. So the few of those are floating around out there if you can get them. Some people like tweezers. I think tweezers are cool, but sometimes it can leave marks in your clay. So I just feel that this is the easiest. When I was on the PBS, I was practicing. It's not a booger, Katie. It's beeswax. And then they were like, you can't say that. So, yeah. So if your beeswax ever gets non-sticky, where it's like super cold and it gets really hard, all you have to do is kind of roll it between your fingertips like this and kind of press it down. Plus, they smell really good. I don't know about you, but I like things to smell good. So I like the smell of beeswax. So yeah. So if it gets kind of If it gets where it isn't sticky anymore, you just roll it around and heat it up, and it will make it re-sticky. You can also gently put this in the tip of a candle for like a second or two, and it will melt this and get it nice and sticky. You do not want to keep this in there too long, or basically you made yourself a candle. And it will catch fire, and you'll be like, oh no, why did he make me burn down my house? And I'm gonna be like, I didn't make you burn down your house at all. I told you 1 second, if that. And so just keep that in mind. Be safe. Don't burn down your house. All right. I see a couple things. I see some, I don't know. There's some, I don't know what's going on. Cindy said that looked about an hour ago. I looked at each of the 205 by 5 individually painted squares. I looked back through them and only remember seeing 65. It was interesting. I don't know what that is about. So if you want to elaborate, maybe I can help. Otherwise, I don't know. Norma says that brick stitch mermaid is the cutest. Thanks. And Cindy Brooks said, great idea. All right, thanks. Now, the other thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need something to put our clay into. I've got these really fun bezels. These ones are from my friend Susan. We sell these at the shop in case you're curious. They retail for $7 a piece. So if you are interested in any of these I don't think these ones are online. If you are interested, you can always email us at info@allegorygallery.com, and we'll be happy to help. Just say that you're interested in the bezels, and we can get you kind of hooked up. All right, I think I'm going to use, let's see if this fits. This doesn't really fit, so I'm not going to use that. I've got this one. This should fit. This looks like it was after an old watch. Like this is not one by Susan. This looks like it was based off of a pocket watch, which you could definitely use an old pocket watch if you have one. I've got a couple different ones at the studio, but I think that would be cute. All right. All right. So I think I found my bezel that I want to use. And let me find my little chatons and different things that I'm going to stick in the clay. I've got all different kinds of things. So that's fun. I've got those, and I kind of like, here's some blue ones. That could be fun. And these ones are super cool. These are like a vitriol, which is like a dark rainbow kind of flavor. But I don't know about if I should use that or not. Maybe we'll see. Also, when you're sticking things in the clay, you want to make sure that you are sticking things that are not going to be that have a super pointy back that is going to be too thick or too pokey outy for your bezel. Otherwise, it's going to sit way high up and you're going to be like, what? So either you then have to dome your clay, or you have to figure something else out. Sometimes if I really want to use something and it's got a back on it, I'll either grind down the back. Like sometimes I'll have buttons and they'll have really, really high shanks. And so either I cut them off if it's a wire one, or I grind them off if it's like glass or whatever. And that way it will sit flush and won't be sticking out too far. Because I do that, I make rings that sometimes I make out of old buttons, and it makes it way easier if you can do that. All right, so whenever you're working with this two-part epoxy clay, it's super important that the surface that you're putting into is clean, and ideally there's a tooth that the clay can kind of grip onto. That sometimes isn't always possible, so just keep that in mind. One thing you can do is take a little bit of sandpaper and scratch it around, and that will leave what's called a tooth, and that's basically a texture that will help the clay grip into. Now this has a lip inside of it, which is called an undercut, and so that will help it keep from popping out as well. Now you can always take a little waste towelette, one of those little alcohol tabs, the ones that they hand out when you go to the barbecue. And those are really great when you need to clean out your bezels and make sure that they're nice and clean. Otherwise, you can take a little bit of alcohol, rubbing alcohol that you've put on a cotton swab or a cotton ball, and that will help clean this up and make sure that the surface is super clean and will bond well with the epoxy clay. And the reason why I say that is that sometimes if you build up enough oils on slick surfaces, it will make like a nonstick coating or a nonstick coating. And after you've done all this work, then it can just pop right out. And you don't want that to happen. All right, so let's get busy. So I've got the two-part epoxy clay. We're going to need equal measures of both. Now, I kind of designate which hand is which. And usually I use gloves, but I only have one glove and I used it the other day. And it's a little bit, it's hard to put the glove back on after you've already put it on. So I usually designate one hand for the other, or I have a little spatula that I will write which one it goes with. So this one says part B and this one says part A. It's important that you do not cross contaminate. If you worked in the restaurant industry, this is probably a no brainer for you because you don't want necessarily like that unexpected fusion of flavors by mix and matching in the spoons. I worked in one place and one of the people, they were like, got wild and they were using the same spoon on stuff, and they were making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and they used a butter knife that they had previously used to spread mustard. And I was like, this tastes kind of not right. And they were like, oh, so don't cross contaminate, because otherwise, if you get some of this into that, it will make it rock hard and unusable. So you don't want to do that. So I kind of designate one hand for the other, or I get little scoops, and you know, that is what it is. What it is at that. All right. So I've got a little bit. This is the size of a chickpea or so. And then I'm going to close this up so I don't accidentally cross-contaminate. And then I've got this. This is a part B, which is the resin part. And if you do use your bare hands for this, go ahead and wash them afterwards with warm soapy water. It's not a huge thing to do, but it will definitely help you in the long run. So I'm just going to mix these equal parts. Now, if you're having a problem judging if these are the same size or not, make another ball or get a bead that's of the size that you want. Sometimes it's easier to see if something is irregular or not the same size if you have an odd number of things. So if you are trying to get things to be even and you need it to be kind of precise, go ahead and add a different thing so that you can visually see the difference. Sometimes when you have two things, it's hard to see if one is bigger than the other. But if you have three things, it's pretty easy to see which one is smaller and which one is bigger. So there's just a visual tip for you. And you just kind of mix this up until it's thoroughly blended and there's no stripes or striations or anything kind of different. You want it to be all homogeneously one color and uniform in color. All right. Cindy asks, can you use the epoxy on any metal? In theory, you just have to prep the surface and get it so that it will, that it will adhere. Because sometimes you can make something and you just stick it on, it's just going to pop right off if it flexes or if there's an issue. However, this is a recessed kind of bezel, so you can use it on whatever. Like this is done on a ceramic form, and I just use it's a porous ceramic, so I just smeared that in there and got it to fit. All right, so I'm mixing, and I just want to make sure that this is mixed really well. Now, when I'm going to put this in there, I want to roll this up and make sure that it's a nice smooth ball. And granted, this isn't going to matter too much, but if you do have visible, if it is visible, you kind of want to make sure that it's nice and smooth and isn't going to be all like super creased and lumpy bumpy style. All right, so I'm just going to spread this out inside of my bezel, pushing it evenly and making sure that it gets kind of underneath that lip of the bezel. And that way it doesn't pop off later. All right. And then, so I've got that, I press that. And then I'm going to take my little beaded friend here. I always wonder what to do with these, and I thought that this would be super cute to use in one of these projects. And I'm just going to embed this. I don't want it to squish up in between the beads, but I do want that to be nice and firmly pressed in there. All right. So that's pretty good. Generally speaking, I want there to be a lip on the things that I press in. However, I think will be good. Cindy asked, did I make the mermaid? Yes, I did. It's brick stitch, and I used a variation on a pattern that I found on Etsy. And I think it's DM Mayuki something. I make a lot of things with bead crumbs, which is an artist that was introduced from Jamie Yoshida at the Bead Gallery. So there's lots of little, they call it kawaii style, which is kind of cute. And yeah, so I made this. I couldn't sleep last night, and that's what when I can't sleep, I like to make things, so I'm just not just laying there. So I'm just gonna use my beeswax applicator to move these around, and then I'm gonna press this in. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this clay or this bezel isn't super tall, and I didn't fill it up way high, so I'm just kind of winging it a little bit. And as you press more things into it, it will displace some of the clay. So it will kind of, there'll be more as you put it in there. So just keep that in mind as well. So if you want something to be relatively flush, you don't want to start off flush because then it will overflow. You know what I mean? And I like this, but I want an odd number of these little chatons. And most of my chatons I moved over to Star Cottage Studio, so I don't have a lot of my things here to put in. So, you know, it is what it is. In theory, William, if you here talk to them for a second, he just got here. I'm gonna go run and get some more chatons because, of course, I have more because I'm a hoarder like that. So tell them about your day, William.
My day. No one wants to hear about my day. My day was doing British car part things. So I just got home in time to vote, I hope. I hope we get out time to vote. I think Andrew was talking about that a little bit. And we are planning a memorial run for the former owner of the business that I work for on Tuesdays. He was a big, well-known name in the British car parts industry, and he spent his life making sure that people can continue to have their collector and antique cars. He spent a huge part of his life making sure that these cars stayed on the road. So we're planning a memorial run for him. I think it's going to be the second or third one. So I spent some time digging up old pictures of him and sharing.
Oh, God. I'm back. That was pretty quick, y'all.
Yeah, it was.
Even though I'm a hoarder, I still know where all my stuff is. So don't hiss when you see this package. I know some people are sensitive about it. I still like them. All right, so these are flatbacks. And I think that I got this in the wrong package because it says Jet, but I don't think that's Jet. That looks like Dorado. Oh, wow. But this is where this comes in really handy. You can pick these up. Now, if you want that to be a really fine point, you can make it be a really fine point by kind of working this like this. And you can get a really kind of more precise than this chopstick kind of blunt end. The other reason why the things are not always sticking is because I noticed somebody put a bead in there and they didn't, it's stuck in there. So that's why I was like, how come this isn't picking up as well as it could? Well, that's why. There's something in the way. So you can spend as much or as little time as you want embellishing this. I'm not going to go too wild. Right now I'm just placing things, and then after I get them placed, then I'll kind of press them back into the situation. And then that because if you want to move stuff, you don't have to gouge the stuff out of the clay. You kind of just want to work with it as easily as possible. I find this to be very meditative. So if you like projects that you can kind of zone out to, this is a good one. You can embed all kinds of things. You can embed rough specimens. You can also embed all kinds of stuff. These are really good if you have a shallow If you have a shallow bezel, the flat backs are really great. If you have heat set flat backs, which are called hot fix, even better, because the chemical reaction between the two-part epoxy will generate heat, and that extra heat will help bond to your crystals. So that's just another thing to keep in mind. These are still commercially available. We don't sell these, but if you are interested in them from us, just let us know. Send us an email at info@allegorygallery.com, and we can always hook you up with different flatbacks and chatons. I've been collecting chatons and cabochons and different things for probably over 20 years. So I have a lot of different things. At one point, one of my friends had offered, they have a workshop and they offered to set those things for me, and we traded. So I gave some to her and she sent them away, and they bezel set them for me, which was really nice because I didn't have to do it myself. I hope I can do that again because that was a lot of fun, but it did take a while because, and this is before COVID. So, and it did, it is what it is at that point. But I like, me and Jamie were talking about horror vacui, which is the fear of blank spaces. And so during our segment of the Great Bead Trade, and I kind of, I'm not a minimalist, I'm a maximalist. So I like to add a lot of flavor to it. I know that's not for everybody. Some folks, they're very, very streamlined and like things to be very clean and without anything like too much embellishment. Me, I'm like, more is more sometimes. So, also, one thing to keep in mind, as I'm reminded, Barnaby just jumped up in William's lap.
He wants to go out, but the neighbors have a dog outside right now.
So, just keep in mind that if you have any animals, sometimes there's cat hairs that can come in and get embedded in your project, and it's not the end of the world. Generally speaking, after I let this set up and cure properly over 48 hours, I then go over with a lighter and just hit it real quick with that lighter, and it burns off whatever um, uh, uh, hairs have kind of stuck. Do it outside because it kind of stinks. But any of my paintings, if you've bought a painting from me, there are invariably brush hairs and cat hairs and all kinds of stuff stuck in it. Generally speaking, I will try to take and burn those off if I can, unless they're super embedded. Cindy says, does the epoxy come in different colors? It does. However, I'm going to show you in just a few moments what to do if you want a different color and you only have this color. So there's all different kinds of dry mediums that you can use to color your epoxy clay. I know Christy uses pan pastels a lot. I like to use mica powders. They work really well, and they're also relatively accessible. Sometimes when I talk about accessibility in art supplies, um, I think it kind of matters. I've taken some classes where the materials it's like amazing class, and I love the technique, I love everything, and then at the end of the class you find out that the only way that you can get those tools is basically if somebody dies and wills it to you. And because I took like this Japanese raisin class, and the dude was like, "Yeah, these are super cool, super cool. But you either have to make your own, or somebody you know has to pass them on to you." And I was like, "Oh, so I'm not going to be doing this next week like I thought I was going to be." All right, so I think I'm getting, let's look at this. I may have added a little too much. That's fine. This will all blend in. So I'm going to take the other side of this and I'm going to press these in so that they're nice and pressed in and have a good adhesion to the surface of the epoxy clay. If you don't press these in, they will pop out and you'll hear that snap, crackle, pop of them popping out, and you'll be like, "What happened? Where are you, little tiny crystal? I miss you, little tiny crystal." So just use the back of this tool. You can press them in nice and firm. You can also use your fingertip, and that will make sure that they're nice and firmly embedded in the surface. Now I'm going to ask William to fold this up so I don't drop these everywhere and then play seek and find in the carpet.
Trusting me, that's scary.
You have a more open, wide space than I do. Let me check and see how big, if I can fit one of these golden shadow in there. I don't know. I don't think I am. Oh wow, whatever. All right, so I've got these. This is my piece. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get a floofy brush. Now, I want to make sure that I have a nice soft tip brush that is going to, and then can you do this one? And I need a nice soft tip brush. You don't want to get a brush that's super stiff because all you're going to be doing is just texturing the clay. It's not actually going to pick anything up. But this is soft, kind of like a makeup brush, and that will pick up your powders really nicely. Now, another thing that you can do is if you have a shish kebab skewer or something like that, you can use that to texture your clay also. So if you don't want it to be super flat, you can texture your clay, and that will also add another dimension to your piece. So just keep that in mind. I'm just going to gently kind of tap around with the shish kebab skewer. Now, the thing about using one of these shish kebab skewers is that it's a wooden surface, and the more you use with this clay, this type of clay, you will get some of that residue inside of your shish kebab skewer. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. You can't use it for you can't eat with it after, save, if you're gonna have a barbecue, use a fresh shish kebab skewer. However, if you are using this as a sculpting tool, it makes it actually even better because it can kind of fill in the grooves of the wood. And if you want to have a nice smooth sculpting tool, that's one way that you can augment and add to your sculpting tool. So I like to do that. Sometimes I use a natural African porcupine quill. And when I do that, I can get in there really nicely and it can kind of fill in. Now, this is also a really good thing because if you need to embed these a little bit firmer, you can use the very tippy tip of this and press them in firmer. And that way they've got a nice adhesion to the surface of the clay. And we did that a little bit using the back of the the chopstick, but I think that this is I can see where some of them are coming up a little bit, and this will make sure that they are definitely sunk in there and there's no chance of them popping out. So I've got different colors here and of this mica powder, and I showed a little bit of this earlier. And I think these are super cool. I'm actually going to do an ombre effect, I think. So I've got this really beautiful blue, which I think would look nice with that. But I also, let me think. I think I've got this green, and I've got this gray, and I've got this blue. The thing is that if I use too much of the same colors, it can kind of disappear. I want to have a nice contrast for my little mermaid there. So you kind of have to think about like what's going to make that really pop out and look good. So maybe I'll do something with this russet, this kind of sweet potato skin color. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do half of this. And I'm just painting this on as if I was painting with a paintbrush. Or I am painting with a paintbrush. I'm painting it on almost like I'm using a paint, like a liquid paint. And then I'm just going to brush off the excess into my, back into the container. And that's just so that I don't end up using it all and kind of wasting the excess. And then I'm going to get another floofy brush. And maybe I'm going to get this blue. And then I'm going to just tap it in there. And I'm starting at this end, and I'm going to work my way down so that I am going to mix the colors. And then that way we can get kind of an ombre. Now, the other thing is that after this is completely set up and cured and is hard as a rock and dried out, I can also go back and antique this with some acrylic paint. So there's a lot of options. Now, this is what it kind of looks like right now. And what I'm going to do is take my fingertip and just lightly press into the surface. And what this is doing is it's making sure that the powder is adhering to the surface of the clay. Now, if you're going to do this, make sure to embed your pieces in before you do the powders. And the reason why is it's kind of like flour. If you flour this beforehand, it's not going to stick. And your goal is to have it stick and have maximum adhesion. So if you go and you put the surface on there first, if you put the powder first, and then you try to stick stuff, you can maybe get it to work, but in all likelihood, it's going to be problematic and not going to stick, and stuff's going to pop out, and then you're going to be like, you done me wrong. And I was like, I didn't do you wrong. I told you what to do. All right. So once this is completely cured, you can take a wet, soapy kind of, or a lightly damp cloth and wipe off the excess. And that will make sure that your crystals and all that fun jazz get clean. And since it's not, if it's not sticking to the clay, it won't stick to, or the powder will only stick to the surface of the clay. So you can wipe off your crystals or whatever, and it will pop right out. Now, I'm going to wait until this is completely cured before I keep working on the face, but I'm going to take and clean this up with some warm soapy water, and you'll see what that looks like after. So there you go. Easy peasy. What do you think?
Let me see. Ooh, that's nice. I like that.
Good for Mermaid. I gave her little bubbies. The other one had like little, it looked like shells or something, but I was like, here you go. So there we have it. And I think
it's already pixelated.
Yeah, I think it looks good. Yeah, oh, William was worried about us getting in trouble.
It's already pixelated. Don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, those are seashells for sure.
8-bit pixelation.
Those are seashells for sure. All right, I'm going to flip this around and say goodbye, and then we're going to run over and vote. William, do it.
Do what?
Make it so I can say goodbye to these people.
You can't do it?
No, because I got smudgeons all over my hands.
It's hard upside down. Smudgeons.
How was that, y'all? Did you have fun? Now you know what to do with all your little random brick stitch creations. I was like, what am I going to do with all these little giblets everywhere?
That's a good idea.
I made some earrings with these before, and they were super cute. But sometimes you don't want to make two. You just want to make one because you're like, oh, that was really fun, but I don't want to make this again. So I'm going to take a picture after this is completely set up and I've cleaned it off, and then you can see the finished product. I might go in and add a little bit of watered down burnt umber and smear it into the recesses, and then wipe that off. And that will add some of the extra, but I kind of like these bright colors, so I'm kind of torn. I think if I antique it too much, it's going to push it in a different direction. But I think since we've got kind of these, it's like bright and kawaii and kind of cute, these bright colors kind of work, you know? So we'll see.
Kawaii.
I see a couple different people saying stuff. June says, bye, Andrew and William.
Hi.
I'm trying to do this where I don't touch the screen because I don't want to inadvertently make my screen scuzzy.
Screen protector on there.
Yeah, whatever. Norma says, gotta run. I'll catch the rest on replay. I definitely want to try this. Thanks, Andrew. So yes, if you ever miss any parts of our videos, they are saved both here and on YouTube. One thing I will say about YouTube, which I'll put the banner up for our YouTube, is that you can easily fast forward to things, and the quality kind of smooths out. So if there are any kind of glitches, either on my end or on your end, when the replay on YouTube, it will smooth out and it will kind of compensate for any of those issues. So if you do go over there, I put the banner up to our YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and set your notifications so that you see our stuff. That way, you see what we're doing. Suzanne says thanks. June says very kawaii. Marion says fun idea. Joyce says definitely watching the replay. I was very tardy for this. And Joyce says that looks awesome. So if you are interested in more of these kind of brick stitch patterns, Jamie's worked with this artist, and it's a Hawaii artist, Bead Crumbs. And then there's also the one that this is kind of inspired off of, which is DM Mayuki or something like that. Or you can make your own. And also, if you're not interested in the kawaii kind of stuff, you can make these beaded components to be anything. So if you're like, I like geometric shapes and I don't like cute things, I like things to be like hard and mean, I don't know. You can bead whatever and then stick it in the clay, and there you go. And it'll be pretty sturdy. All right. Hopefully you all had fun and learned a lot. I'm Andrew from Allegory Gallery, And I hope you enjoyed our time together today. William will be back tomorrow with another Facebook Live at 5. And we'll see you here on Facebook, and we'll also see you on YouTube. All right, bye-bye.